what's up guys, and welcome back to my channel, Lunadia33. Today I'm going to do my top 10 recommended decks for beginners. I haven't actually picked them out yet. I still have to look through my deck spec here, but I'm going to have a mixture of like mass market decks, indie decks. Some of them may be like just animal themed. Some of them might be human themed, I guess you would call it, where it's not really, you know, it doesn't have animals or fantasy stuff, it's just regular humans. So let me go ahead and pick those out, and then I will come and show you, and we'll talk a little bit about them and why I feel they are pretty good for beginners to start off with. So I'll be right back. All right, so I went through my decks here and I picked out 10. I have the kind of like original artwork right here just for comparison, so I guess 11, but I'm just using this as comparison. Oh, I should have mentioned this earlier, but this is my top 10 RWS base decks. So you can't go wrong with the original, you know, the one that depicts the original artwork from Pamela Coleman Smith. So this one is pretty straightforward. You can always get this as your first to start out with. You know what I mean? But like this one you can't go wrong with, obviously. It's pretty straightforward, and all of the RWS decks are based on the original artwork here. Just to show you guys what this one is in case you're interested, it's called the Radiant Wise Spirit Tarot, and I got this off of Amazon. It was a little hard with choosing the 10 decks, honestly, because I was trying to not go off of the decks that I'm very comfortable with using, and I kind of just pick it up like that, because some of the ones that I was gonna bring out have more like it's more intuitive based. I think it's mainly because of the artwork, and I feel like that can throw off a beginner too. So I try to pick the decks that you don't really have to use much of your intuition, if that makes sense. And I do recommend for you to first like do your book study, like study with the book, and then move on to intuition. That's not to say that you can't just like jump into intuition, but I feel like your readings would be a bit better if you first understand the initial meaning of the cards and then go off of your intuition. Hopefully that makes sense. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Witch's Tarot by Ellen Dugan. This one right here, it's by Llewellyn. So it comes in this big ass box, magnetic box here. The guidebook in here though, guys, oh my goodness, she thick, just a little bit, but full of, I just have to smell it, but full of like so much information. You got a big ass, you know, picture here of the card, and it has reversals and right side up meanings here, if I can find it. So it has a lot of information here. Hopefully you can see it on the camera, but it has meanings, a little bit of story of the card too, and then here you have your right side up and reversed meanings on here. This is actually one of the tarot decks that I got when I started getting back into tarot, when I started my collection. I think it was in my very first haul video. I'm pretty sure it was. But this book helped me out so much to, you know, relearning it and all that. So I highly recommend looking into this book. Be patient with yourself. And then here is the deck. I edged mine. It doesn't come edged black, but I edged mine in black. These are the backs. It's a glossy finish. If you guys are familiar with Llewellyn cardstock, it's very flexible, kind of flimsy on the flimsy side. But I feel like the artwork in here is very straightforward to that of the original RWS artwork. So that's why I think this would be pretty good for beginners. Not only because of the great guidebook that it has, but because the artwork is very similar. It doesn't start off as other decks kind of do. Do you know what I mean? So if you have an original RWS and you compare it to this one, you would see a lot of similarities. So this is why I would recommend this deck for beginners. Very easy to read with. And like I said, be patient with yourselves when you're starting off and when you're learning. When you can, read the guidebook too. And obviously, of course, take breaks as you're studying too, right? All right, now we're gonna go to the second one. These are in no particular order, by the way. I just picked out 10 decks. So I'm just gonna grab whatever one I feel like grabbing right now. Let's see. I'll do this one. This is an animal-based deck. It's Tarot of the Magical Forest. If you're... I don't think with it being an animal deck either is going to throw anybody off because, like I said, the artwork is very similar to that of the original. It's just instead of people, you have animals. So I feel it's very straightforward in that sense too. Like it's not too, not abstract, but it's not too, like the artwork isn't too different. You know, it sticks to like the placements of the figures. It sticks to the placements of the suits, like where you would normally see, let's say, the 9 of Wands in the original, you're going to see the 9 of Wands placed in the same manner in this deck. And in most of the decks that I'm going to show you too. So that's why I feel like this one would be pretty good for beginners. Also, if you like animals, you know, or animal decks, this is pretty good to start off with. The artwork isn't too confusing. Here's the 9 of Swords. I feel like I should, let me grab the original just to like compare for you guys too. 1 second. All right, so this is just to compare. So this is from the Tarot of the Magical Forest, right? We have a cat figurine kind of holding their hands sort of up to their eyes. They kind of look like they have small hands actually. But you see their body language here, right? And then you see the placement of the swords and also the fact that they're in bed. So if you compare it to the original, I'm gonna block my face for a second. You see how it's very similar? So that's why I feel like this one would be really good for beginners because it sticks to the original layout of the Pamela's artwork, and as well as the placements of like the suits. Like here, the placement of the swords is the same as the original. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's one reason why I would recommend this one for beginners. And if you like animals. It shouldn't throw you off that much just because there's animals in place of humans here. Oh, and most of the decks, at least all the mass market decks that I have, I got them all on Amazon. So just go on Amazon, search the name of the deck, and I'm sure you'll get it pop up. All right, next I'm gonna do an indie deck. So this one is called the Elemental Wisdom Tarot. It's by Taroteka Studios. And if you guys don't know, because I know some people aren't familiar with indie decks, at least I remember when I had no idea what an indie deck was. Indie decks are typically more expensive because they're not mass market, because they're not made by huge companies, and it's usually just like one independent creator or one independent small little company. So this one is just a bit more on the pricier side. I kind of forgot how much I paid for it because I think it shipped from Poland. Anyways, so these are, oh my god, I love this world card. Look at the rainbows. So this one is also based on RWS, right? All of the decks that I'm gonna show you today are. But I feel like this one, the artwork isn't too out there for you to, as a beginner, for you to get confused, like what does this mean? You know, if you're studying the tarot for the first time. I feel it's very straightforward. And also, for the most part, the placement of these suits are kind of similar to the original RWS. Not all of the cards are, of course, but I feel like it still gets the point across. Look at this. My god, if only I can like zoom in to the detail here. This is such a pretty deck. Look at this Hermit. Here, let me grab the Hermit from the original to compare to this one. 1 second. All right, so Hermit from the Elemental Wisdom Tarot, right? You see that? You got a person here holding a staff and holding that pretty lantern. And then here's the original. They're even facing the same way. You see, you got the person, same body language, and they're holding a lantern. So I feel this deck would be pretty decent for beginners to start off with too. It doesn't really throw you off. It's very similar to the original artwork, which is also why I love this deck. Next, I have the traditional Manga Tarot for you manga lovers out there. This is also, I feel like it's very straightforward as well. I mean, the only difference is obviously it's manga, so I know it's not going to be everyone's thing, but I know there are some manga lovers out there who do practice tarot too. So I feel like you'd very much love this deck, especially if you're starting out, you know? The artwork isn't that abstract or different to throw you off from the original artwork and their meanings. Here, which one is this one? Five of Wands. So let me compare the Five of Wands with the original just so you guys can see what I mean. So you know that it is in fact one of those easier decks to read with. 1 second. All right, so this is the Five of Wands in, I totally forgot the name, in the traditional Manga Tarot, right? And then this is the Five of Wands in the original. But you see how the body language, even sort of the placement or the direction that the wands are going are very similar. Maybe even like the colors too in the clothing. If you look a little closer, maybe. But you see how there's similarities there? So that's why I feel like this deck would be pretty good for a beginner to start off with. It's whether or not it's very similar to the original RWS artwork. That's what I feel personally would help beginners who want to start learning the RWS, is to go off of, well, one is to use the original, right? Like this one. But also, if you're searching for other types of decks, go off of like what looks or feels very close to the original, you know? There might be decks out there that you're drawn to that like don't look anything like the original, which is totally fine. Just be patient with yourselves when you're learning, right? And make sure if there is a book to study the book too, and then move on to using your intuition with reading if you're comfortable with using your intuition, or if you're an intuitive reader too, because I know not everyone reads intuitively. The next one is the Happy Tarot right here. I love this one because of the vibes that I get. It's very like kid energy or child energy. These are the backs, and it's I guess you'd call it like cartoony, but it's also very similar to the original. It's just really the artwork that's different, the style, but it still gives the point across to you know, the original RWS. This one is, I think this is the Eight of Swords. Yeah, Eight of Swords. Here, let's compare Eight of Swords to this one, just for y'all to see what I mean. All right, so here is the Eight of Swords in the Happy Tarot. You see how the person is kind of bounded. They have the, what would this be? Not a bandage. Well, it might be a bandage, I don't know. But that like piece of cloth on their eyes. Then you have the 8 swords around them. And this is comparing it to the original. You see how there's similarities in there? Obviously the artwork is very different, but it still holds truth to the original RWS. So that is what I would recommend, the Happy Tarot. Next we have an animal deck. This is the Crow Tarot. It's strictly just crows in place of the humans that we would see in the original RWS. But everything else, as far as like the placement of the suits, is very similar, if not exactly the same. The artwork is just a little bit different too, like the style, but it still gets the point across. These cards too are just a little bit bigger than your normal tarot size. So it's just a crow. This is the Knight of Wands. So you have your crow, the horse that we usually see in the knights. Then you have your wand in place of a human being there on the horse. This one is the Eight of Cups. Let's compare this one to the original Eight of Cups, just so you guys can see what I'm talking about. All right, so Eight of Cups in the Crow Tarot, right? You have your 8 cups down here. Notice the placement of the cups too. And then you have the crow figure looking sort of out to the horizon of the mountains. And you have a moon. Then if we compare it to the original, they're headed in a different direction, but notice the placement of the cups. Very similar, if not the same, for that in the Crow Tarot. And then they also have the moon. And in this case, the crow is facing sort of the direction of where they might start to fly. Whereas in this one, you obviously have the human walking and also facing the direction where they want to walk to, right? But you see what I mean about the similarities here? So that's why I feel like the Crow Tarot would also be pretty good for beginners. The only difference again is that instead of human, you have, or humans, you have crows. So I just noticed a lot of these decks are from US games. They have good decks and they're affordable too. All right, next we have an indie deck. This one is called the Dark Mansion Tarot. I love this deck. This is from Taroteka Studios. It's the same people who did the Elemental Wisdom Tarot that I showed you earlier in the video. So this deck, again, is one that is very, very similar to the RWS. The only difference is obviously the artwork, the art style, but for the most part, it has the same symbolism and even like the placement of the suits, like the cups ones, swords, pentacles. And I also feel like the artwork itself is not as confusing like most indie decks or most other types of decks that come out. It's very straightforward. And also, if anybody's like a fan of Tim Burton stuff or Tim Burton-esque artwork, this is a pretty good deck to get for that. This one is this the Hermit? It is. I love this Hermit. Look at that schnoz. He looks so tired too, and so does the bird. But like we saw the Hermit earlier, right? So here you have the Hermit figure facing the same way as the original, in the original artwork. They're facing to, this would be my left. I don't know what's the left for you guys or the right. But they're facing the same direction. You have the moon, which we saw in the Hermit as well. Actually, was the moon in the Hermit? Now I need to check. Hold on. Ah, there is no moon. I mean, you can argue that there probably is somewhere, but... So here's the original, and then this is from the Dark Mansion Tarot. So there's no moon in the original, but that's cool, right? That's fine. It looks like the sun is setting anyways, and the moon and the stars might come out too. So here you have, again, the same figure, an elderly looking person facing the same direction as the original. And in here, instead of them having a lantern, they have a candle, right? And they do also technically have the staff, if you look closely, except for them, it's a walking stick. I mean, it's initially still the same like here in the original, right? They're using it as a walking stick or support in whatever journey they're taking. Do you know what I mean though? It's one of those decks that are just very easy to read with. And the artwork is just really, really nice. So that is the Dark Mansion Tarot. Next, I have the Steampunk Tarot. This is also by Llewellyn. So it comes in the similar boxes they have. Magnetic clasp here. Same cardstock and all that jazz. This is the book. It's fairly thick too. And you got, I love that most of them have like a really huge picture of the cards. You got a huge picture and then you have the info of the cards. So in here, I don't believe they offer, this book doesn't offer reversed meanings or technically right side up meanings. It does have, you have your title and then you have a quote of some sort. And then you have like the story behind the card, which you can get information for as you're reading. They do have on here core meanings, which I feel like that might be just the initial meaning of the card. You know, like the right side up meaning of the card. So they have that, but they don't have reverse meanings in here. But still, if you're a beginner and you want to get this deck, I recommend reading the book. Here is the deck. It doesn't come edged. I edged mine in a gunmetal shimmery gray here for one of the inks that I make. I believe it's called Smoke, and I sell it on my Etsy, which I'll include a link down below. Look how shimmery that is. Okay, these are the backs. And this one, just like the title, it's steampunk themed. So if that's your jazz, then you know, that's just another reason to get this deck. And like the others, it's very straightforward in the artwork. This one looks like the Five of Pentacles. Actually, let's compare this one to the original before I show you more cards. Just so you see like the difference in art, but also the similarity and the symbolism behind the art, if that makes sense. I say that a lot. I say, if that makes sense, does that make sense? Because I really want to make sure that I'm not confusing you guys. Sorry in advance if I ever did or if I do. All right, so again, this is the Five of Pentacles in the Steampunk Tarot. So you have two figures, right? You have the snow. You have the window here with the Five Pentacles. One of them is just slightly cut off, but you know, you can kind of see what's going on here, right? And then this is comparing it to the original. You have your two figures. You also have the window, and you have the pentacles at the window, and you have the snow. So you see how there's similarities in there, which I think is very helpful for those who are starting off, especially if you're using the original deck to start off with, but you want to kind of not broaden your collection, but like you want to see what else is out there, what else might catch your fancy, instead of just sticking to the original. If that's you, you don't have to buy another deck, obviously, but if you're interested in seeing what's out there and you want to keep learning with other decks, then, you know, this is one that I feel would be pretty helpful, especially if you like steampunk too, because a lot of these have their own theme. I haven't used this one in a while, so I'm kind of, it's as if I'm seeing it for the first time. Look at this Nine of Swords. We saw a Nine of Swords in another deck not too long ago. If you remember what that looked like, can you see the similarities? They have the person, look at their body language, their hands, I think here are at their ears, but you also have the placement of the swords above their bed. And the other ones, I think they were placed like going in a certain direction. Here you have them placed going down to them, but they're still placed above them. And then you have the bed here too. So that's why I feel like this one would be pretty decent for beginners to start off with as well. The artwork isn't really that confusing, and it's very straightforward and similar to the original RWS artwork. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about the Steampunk Tarot. Is that just me? Because I don't really see it out there. I mean, unless it's probably not, you know, everyone's thing because it's steampunk, but to each their own. All right, so the next one is an indie deck. This one is called the This Might Hurt Tarot. The This Might Hurt Tarot. This was my very first indie deck, by the way. It started my journey of indie decks. Ooh, and it has like hollow. Look at that pretty hollow. These are the backs. This one is a very, what would you call it? Modern. It's a modern tarot deck, I guess, or modern art style. Very straightforward, very simple. I love the artwork in here. It's kind of cartoony, but then it's not cartoony. I don't really know where to categorize this one. But it's very modern. Here, let's compare this Hierophant with the original. And then we'll look at the rest of the cards. 1 second. All right, so this is the Hierophant from the This Might Hurt Tarot. Notice the two figures at the base here, or at the feet of the Hierophant. Notice the body language of the Hierophant. They have their hand, this hand pointed up. And then in this hand, they have that, I don't know if you call that a wand, some sort of staff. Then you have two statues or figures behind them. And then if we compare it, oh, even the headdress too. If you compare it to the original, you see how there's the two figures at the base or by their feet. And then look at the Hierophant's body language. Look at the hands. The same hand is pointing upward, and then the other hand, which is also the same one, is holding that staff. And then behind them, you also have the two pillars. But you see like the similarities. There's differences, but there's still similarities, which is, again, what I feel would help beginners if they want to stray off and use other decks to start off with. So that's why I feel that This Might Hurt Tarot would be really good. also feels great too. It's just one of those decks. It shuffles beautifully. There's freaking hollow edges on here. Who doesn't love rainbows? Oh look, here's our, we've been seeing a lot of the Nine of Swords. This is the Nine of Swords in this deck. Now if you remember the other ones, look at the body language. Here we have the 9 swords pointing downwards, kind of like the Steampunk Tarot. Those swords are pointing downwards towards the person, and here you also have them pointing downwards towards the person. We don't necessarily see the bed. Well, no, I lied. At first I thought that this was like their leg, because I'm seeing it in a weird angle like on my camera screen. But this is actually like their bed sheet right here. So you still have the inclusion of the bed there. But that is why I would, oh, here's our 3 of Swords. That is why I would dub the This Might Hurt Tarot as a pretty good deck for beginners. All right, last one, guys. This one is the golden, now I'm probably gonna say this wrong because I don't know if it's French or not, and I don't speak a French. The Golden Art Nouveau or Nouveau Tarot. And it's all like, look at that gold. I like gold. Have y'all ever seen? Why did I forget the title of the movie? Austin Powers. The Austin Powers movies. Have any of y'all ever seen him? If you have, you know where that quote is from. All right, back to the video. I think I threw out the Little White Book in here. I don't think the Little White Book in this deck was that informative. There had to have been a particular reason why I threw it out. But anyways, let's get to the cards. So this is the back. Is this by USD? No, this is by Los Caribos, which is, oh, I feel like they're kind of similar, just a little bit, at least with like the decks that are this size. So this is initially a clone. I feel like this is more of a clone of the RWS. Because the other ones, I mean, I guess you can call the other ones that I showed you clones, but they're, I guess the artwork is kind of makes them their own thing, but this one feels more like to the T of the original. And look at this gold. Here, let's see if I can, we'll compare the death card, because this is the death card here. I don't know if you guys can see the, without me blinding you, I'm sorry. You see the gold in there? Isn't that pretty? I wish they made one with like silver, because I love silver. I'll pick silver over gold. Let me grab the death card in the original just so we can compare it. So this is, I totally forgot the name, Golden Art Nouveau or Nouveau Tarot, right? This is the death card in that deck. Now look at, you see the flag here, you see death, the white horse. There's, I think that's a king on the floor there. I think there's a baby right there and somebody holding the baby. This looks to be some sort of bishop or priest or something with like their get up there. And then there's like 2 buildings right there. This kind of reminds me of the buildings that are in the moon card. All right, I'm straying off. But like, notice what's in here, right? And then if we look at the original, you have your white horse, the white rider right there, right? You have the flag with the flower. You have death in armor and you see their skull face. And then you even have the king right here. That's also on the floor over here. You have the 3 figures right here, which are also on the same corner over here. Oh, sorry, I'm over there blinding you. But you see the similarities? Actually, are the 2 towers in here? They are. They're, oh sorry, they're right here on that corner. So these are very, very similar. These, I think this is probably the most similar deck. The most, I was gonna say the most cloned deck. It's the one with the most similarities is what I'm trying to say to the original. So that's why I feel like this would be a very good deck for beginners. I will say though, this The only reason why this one might be a bit difficult for beginners is because of the, I don't think the titles of the, yeah. So the majors don't have titles. Actually, not even the minors. They just have the number that their card is associated with. The minors have like the suit notated down here and then their number. So like here you have the cup and the number, and if we find another one, I think the aces, oh, not even the aces have titles. You have the wand down here and then the number. So I think that's one thing that may make it difficult for beginners, is just that. But other than that, everything else is very similar to the original. Like to the T. Oh my god, look at that gold without me blinding you. All right, well that was the last deck in this video that I recommend for beginners. Honestly, I feel like I probably could have pulled out maybe 20 decks for beginners that I have, but I didn't want to make this video super long, so I didn't. If you guys are interested in me doing a like 10 oracle decks for beginners, let me know in the comments down below. I do have quite a few oracle decks that I also feel are pretty good for beginners too. If you have any questions for me on the information that I provided in this video, or on what to look out for as far as the deck goes if you're a beginner and you want to make sure you get something that's, you know, fairly easy to read, let me know in the comments down below. I do of course recommend the decks that I did show you today in this video if you are a beginner and you want to start learning. But of course, I do also highly recommend that you start off with the original RWS, or a deck that has the original RWS artwork. And then when you feel comfortable, like start hunting for another deck that kind of, you know, tickles your spiritual fancy that you want to practice with. It's not needed for you to have, you know, all the decks that I showed you today. Oh, and for the most part, I believe I already did flip throughs on all of the decks that I showed you. So just check out my playlist and I'm sure you'll find the deck. If I didn't though, then I probably will soon. All right guys, well that is it for this video. If you stuck to the end, or at least to this part of the video, add the notebook emoji, you know, the one that you take notes with. I think there's a few of them, but I'll post on the screen which one I'm looking for. But add the notebook emoji. Don't forget to like the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!